Jiho walked through the crowded market of Station Kepler 7, his tool bag heavy on his shoulder. The station was a massive wheel spinning in space, home to thousands of humans and aliens who came here to trade and live. He had just finished repairing a broken air filter in Section D and wanted nothing more than to get back to his small apartment and sleep. The market was loud and colorful. Alien merchants shouted about their goods in a dozen different languages. Strange food sizzled on heated plates. The air smelled like spices Jiho couldn't name. He pushed through the crowd, tired and ready to be done with the day. That's when he heard the laughter. Not the good kind. The mean kind. Jiho stopped and looked. A group of tall aliens with blue skin stood in a circle. They were pointing at something in the middle, their voices sharp and cruel. The Velthara were known throughout the galaxy for their beauty. Their skin glowed softly with patterns of light that shifted like living tattoos. But these Velthara weren't beautiful right now. Their faces were twisted with mockery. In the center of their circle sat a young Velthara girl. She looked about 16 in human years. Her skin barely glowed at all and the light patterns were dull and broken. She sat on the ground with her hands outstretched, trying to feel her way around. Her eyes were open, but they didn't focus on anything. She was blind. "Look at the cursed one," one of the Velthara said in broken English. "She cannot see the light path. She brings shame." Another kicked a small bag near the girl. "Why do you stay here? Go back to the darkness where you belong." The girl said nothing. She just pulled her knees to her chest and made herself small. Jiho saw a tear run down her face, but she didn't make a sound. She had learned that crying only made the bullies worse. Something hot and angry twisted in Jiho's chest. He thought of his grandmother, who had gone blind when he was young. He remembered the way some people had looked at her, like she was broken. Like she was less. "Hey!" Jiho shouted, pushing through the crowd. "Leave her alone." The Velthara turned to look at him. One of them, taller than the others, stared down at Jiho with glowing eyes. "This is not human business, little engineer. Walk away." "I'm not walking anywhere," Jiho said. His hands were shaking, but he stood his ground. "You're on a neutral station. That means everyone follows the same rules. And rule 1 is don't be a jerk to kids," the tall Velthara laughed. "She is cursed. The gods marked her blind as punishment. We only speak truth." "The only truth here is that you're bullying a girl who can't fight back," Jiho said. He moved to stand between them and the girl. "So either walk away or I call station security." For a long moment no one moved. Then the tall Velthara made a disgusted sound. "Keep the cursed one, human. May her darkness follow you." The group walked away, their skin patterns flashing with irritation. Jiho let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He turned to the girl and knelt down beside her. "Are you okay?" The girl's head turned toward his voice, but her eyes didn't meet his. "You should not have done that," she said softly. Her English was better than the others. "They will remember you now." "Let them remember," Jiho said. "Can you stand? Are you hurt?" "I am not hurt. Not in ways that can be fixed." The girl felt around for her bag and pulled it close. "Thank you for your kindness, human. But kindness cannot cure a curse." "You're not cursed," Jiho said firmly. "You're just blind. That's not the same thing." The girl tilted her head, confused. "What is the difference?" Jiho helped her stand up. She was tall even for a young Velthara. "A curse is magic nonsense. Being blind is just your eyes don't work. It's a medical condition, not a punishment from the gods. My people do not see it that way." The girl's voice was sad and old, too old for someone so young. "I was born without the ability to see the light paths. Among Velthara, this means I am marked by the gods as unwanted. My family left me here 3 cycles ago. They said prayers for my soul and walked away." Jiho felt that hot anger again. "What kind of people abandoned a child? What's your name?" "I am called Lyra." "I'm Jiho, and Lyra, your people are wrong." "There's nothing wrong with you that can't be helped." Lyra shook her head. "Many have said this before. But Velthara medicine cannot fix what the gods have broken. Our healers tried when I was young. They said my brain does not connect to my eyes the way it should. The pathways are different. Wrong. Different doesn't mean wrong," Jiho said. An idea was forming in his mind. A crazy idea, but maybe not impossible. "Lyra, what if I told you I might be able to help you see?" Lyra went very still. "That is not funny, human. I'm not joking. I'm an engineer. I work with neural interfaces and sensory equipment. If your brain processes visual information differently, Maybe we can build something that translates it into a format you can understand. Build something? Lyra's voice was small, fragile with a hope she was afraid to feel. Like a machine? Like a device? A visor or something that sits on your face and helps your brain make sense of what your eyes see? Jiho was getting excited now, his engineer brain already working through possibilities. It won't be easy. I'd need to study how Velthara vision works and how your neural pathways are different. But it's possible, maybe. Why would you do this? Lyra asked. You do not know me. I cannot pay you. Jiho thought about his grandmother again, how she used to say that the world looked dark to her, but it didn't have to feel dark. How she taught him that people who couldn't see with their eyes often saw with their hearts better than anyone else. Because I can. Jiho said simply, because someone should. And because I think you deserve a chance to see the stars. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded just once. If you truly believe you can help me, I will try. But I have hoped before, human Jiho. I have been disappointed before. I do not know if my heart can break again. Then we'll be careful with your heart, Jiho said. Come on, my workshop isn't far. Let's start with some basic scans and see what we're working with. He took her hand gently and led her through the market. Lyra walked carefully, her free hand outstretched, touching walls and counting steps. She had learned to navigate a world she couldn't see. But maybe, just maybe, that was about to change. Jiho didn't know it yet. But this simple act of kindness was about to reshape the galaxy. The device he would build wouldn't just give sight to a blind girl. It would wake something ancient. Something powerful. Something that had been sleeping for 10,000 years, waiting for someone to finally open the right door. All because a human engineer couldn't walk past a girl who needed help. 3 months had passed since Jiho met Lyra in the market. His small workshop had become their second home. Every evening after his regular work shifts, Jiho would return to find Lyra waiting outside his door, her hand trailing along the wall to count the distance from the elevator. The workshop was cluttered with half-finished projects and humming equipment. Jiho had cleared a space for Lyra near his main workbench where she could sit comfortably. She had learned the layout of the room by touch, knew where every tool was placed, could navigate it better than some people who could see. Tonight, Jiho stared at his computer screen, rubbing his tired eyes. The data made his head hurt. Velthara neural pathways were nothing like human ones. Where human brains processed light through straightforward electrical signals, Velthara brains used something closer to quantum entanglement. Their neural networks didn't just receive visual information. They experienced it through bioluminescent patterns that connected directly to some kind of dimensional layer Jiho barely understood. You are frustrated, Lyra said from her chair. She was holding a piece of smooth metal, running her fingers over it repeatedly. Jiho had noticed she did this when she was nervous. How can you tell? Jiho asked, turning away from the screen. Your breathing changes. You sigh more. And you tap your foot when you think too hard. Lyra smiled softly. I cannot see Jiho, but I learned to notice other things. Jiho leaned back in his chair. You're right. I'm stuck. The technology exists to build what we need, but the power requirements are insane. And the quantum resonance crystals I'd need to match your neural frequency? They cost more than I make in 5 years. Then perhaps we should stop, Lyra said quietly. You have already spent so much time on me. You barely sleep. Your friend Tae-young says you are not eating properly. Jiho smiled. Tae-young had been helping with the technical aspects when he could. The cybernetics specialist had taken one look at Jiho's obsessive work habits and started bringing him food and coffee. Tae-young worries too much. He worries the right amount, Lyra said. And he is correct to worry. This project consumes you. It's important. Why? Lyra set down the metal piece and turned her face toward him. Even though her eyes couldn't see, Jiho always felt like she was looking right into his soul. Why does this matter so much to you? Jiho was quiet for a moment. My grandmother went blind when I was 10. Genetic condition couldn't be fixed. I watched her struggle every day. But the worst part wasn't that she couldn't see. It was how people treated her. Like she was helpless. Like she was less than whole. She taught you to see differently, Lyra said. She taught me that limitations are just problems waiting for solutions. Jiho stood up and walked to his storage cabinet. And I'm not giving up on this problem. I just need to think differently. Over the next weeks, Lyra taught Jiho about Velthara culture while he worked. She told him about her homeworld, a place where cities glowed with living light. She described the light paths, the way her people saw each other through patterns of bioluminescence that showed emotion and intent. To a Velthera, lying was nearly impossible because their skin always told the truth. "We have stories," Lyra said one evening. "Old tales from before we had technology. Would you like to hear one?" "Sure," Jiho said, calibrating a sensor array. "There is a god called Vethmora," Lyra began. Her voice took on a storytelling rhythm, like she had heard this tale many times. In the ancient days, Vethmora could see through the eyes of every Velthara. The god experienced all of existence through us, but then something happened. The stories are not clear about what. Some say Vethmora saw something that should not be seen. Others say the god looked too deeply into the void between dimensions. But the result was the same. Vethmora went blind and fell into eternal sleep. "That's a sad story," Jiho said. "It is a warning," Lyra replied. "My people believe that those born blind carry a piece of Vethmora's curse, that we are marked by the sleeping god. Sounds like superstition to me." "Perhaps, but all superstition comes from somewhere." Lyra tilted her head. "Do you believe in gods, Jiho?" "I believe in things I can measure and fix," Jiho said. But something about the story bothered him in a way he couldn't explain. He shook it off and returned to work. The breakthrough came on a rainy night. Station weather systems had activated the precipitation simulators, making everything feel damp and gray. Tae-young had stopped by with food and found Jiho staring at a holographic display of neural patterns. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Tae-young said, setting down containers of noodles. "I figured it out," Jiho whispered. "The quantum resonance crystal. I don't need a big one. Just a fragment. A tiny piece would be enough if I configure the amplification correctly." "Those fragments still cost a fortune," Tae-young pointed out. "I know." Jiho pulled up his personal account on his tablet. "I'm selling everything. My grandmother's jewelry, my collection of old Earth tech, my share in the cargo investment, all of it." "Jiho, that's your savings. Your security." "What's the point of security if I can't sleep at night knowing I gave up on something important?" Jiho looked at his friend. "I need your help. Can you find me a crystal fragment?" "I'll pay whatever it costs," Tae-young sighed. "You're impossible. But yes, I know a supplier. Give me a week." 2 weeks later, Jiho held a small crystal fragment in his hand. It was no bigger than his thumbnail, glowing with an inner light that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could see. It had cost him everything he owned except his basic tools and his apartment. "Worth it," he muttered. The visor took shape over the following month. It was elegant in its simplicity. A thin band that would rest across Lyra's eyes with microsensors that would read the bioluminescent patterns around her. The quantum resonance crystal would translate those patterns into neural signals her unique brain could process. Theoretically. "Tomorrow," Jiho told Lyra one evening. "Tomorrow we test it." Lyra's hands trembled. "I am afraid of what?" "Of hoping too much. Of being disappointed. Of what happens if this works." She paused. "What if I do not like what I see? What if the world is not as beautiful as I imagined?" Jiho knelt beside her chair. "Then we'll adjust it." "But Lyra, I've seen your face when you touch flowers or listen to music. You find beauty in everything. I think you'll love what you see. And if it does not work, then we try again. And again. Until it does." Jiho took her hand. "I'm not giving up on you ever." That night, Jiho couldn't sleep. He stared at the finished visor on his workbench. It looked almost alive, the crystal inside pulsing with soft light. He had checked every connection 100 times. The power cells were charged. The calibration was perfect. Everything was ready. He just hoped it was enough. In her small room on the other side of the station, Lyra also couldn't sleep. She ran her fingers over the walls, memorizing the texture of darkness. Tomorrow, if Jiho's device worked, this might be the last night she experienced the world this way. Part of her was excited. Part of her was terrified. And a very small part of her, the part that still remembered her mother's face in fading memories, whispered that maybe she didn't deserve this gift. But she would try anyway. For Jiho, who had given everything to help her, for herself, who had spent so long in darkness, for the tiny, fragile hope that refused to die no matter how many times it had been crushed. Tomorrow, Lyra would either see the stars, or she would learn to live with one more disappointment. Either way, she would face it with courage. She had learned courage from a human engineer who, couldn't walk past a girl who needed help. The morning arrived with artificial sunlight streaming through the station's light panels. Jiho had been awake for hours, checking and rechecking the visor. His hand shook as he held it. 3 months of work, everything he owned. All of it came down to this moment. Tae-young arrived early carrying coffee and looking nervous. Ready? No, Jiho admitted. But we're doing this anyway. Lyra came soon after, guided by Tae-young. She wore a simple gray dress and her hair was braided carefully. Jiho noticed she had taken extra care with her appearance today. She was as nervous as he was. Good morning, Lyra, Jiho said, trying to keep his voice steady. Is it good? Lyra asked. I cannot tell. But I trust you. They sat her in the comfortable chair. Jiho explained what would happen. The visor will rest across your eyes. It might feel strange at first. Cold. Then there will be a tingling sensation as it connects with your neural pathways. The crystal needs about 30 seconds to sync with your brain. During that time, keep your eyes open and try to stay calm. What if it hurts? Lyra asked. It shouldn't, but if it does, tell me immediately and I'll stop. Jiho picked up the visor. It was warm in his hands, the crystal pulsing gently. Ready? Lyra nodded. She couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight with fear and hope. Jiho carefully placed the visor across her eyes. The thin band adjusted automatically to fit her face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal began to glow brighter. Lyra gasped as the tingling started, spreading from the visor through her skull. I feel it, she whispered, like tiny lights dancing inside my head. That's normal. Just breathe. Let it sink. Jiho watched the diagnostic display on his tablet. Neural pathways connecting, quantum resonance stabilizing, crystal frequency matching. Everything looked perfect. Almost too perfect. Then Lyra screamed, not in pain, in shock. Her hands flew up to cover the visor, but she didn't tear it off. She just sat there frozen, her mouth open in a soundless cry. Lyra, are you okay? Should I stop it? Jiho reached for the visor. No! Lyra's voice was choked with tears. No, don't stop it. I can see. Jiho, I can see. The words hung in the air like magic. Tae-young let out a breath he'd been holding. Jiho felt his legs go weak with relief. Lyra's hand slowly lowered from the visor. She turned her head, and for the first time in her life, her eyes focused. They found Jiho's face. Really saw him. She stared at him like he was the most wonderful thing in the universe. You're crying, she said, her voice full of wonder. Tears look like little diamonds on your face. Jiho laughed and wiped his eyes. What else do you see? Lyra stood up slowly, carefully, like a newborn learning to walk. She looked around the workshop. Colors, so many colors. Is that blue? And that's red? I learned the words, but I never knew. They're so bright. So beautiful. She walked to the window and pressed her hands against the glass. Beyond it, space stretched out forever, filled with stars. Stars, Lyra breathed. They're not just points of light. They're burning. Living. Each one is different. She turned back to them, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Thank you. I have no words big enough for what you've given me. They spent hours together that day. Lyra wanted to see everything. They walked through the station markets, and she stared at the alien merchants with delight. They went to the observation deck where she watched ships come and go. Jiho showed her pictures of Earth on his tablet, and she cried again when she saw oceans and mountains. The universe is so much more than I imagined, she said that evening. Exhausted, but happy. I need to rest now. My brain is tired from processing so much. But tomorrow I want to see more, everything, every single thing. Jiho walked her back to her room. The visor needs to charge overnight anyway. We'll explore more tomorrow. After Lyra left, Jiho and Tae-young celebrated quietly in the workshop. They had done it. They had actually done it. A human engineer had solved a problem that Velthera medicine had declared impossible. But that night, something changed. Lyra fell asleep with the visor carefully placed on her nightstand. She fell into dreams deeper than any she had experienced before. In those dreams, she stood in a vast space that was not a place. It was everywhere and nowhere. Darkness surrounded her, but it was not empty darkness. It was full, waiting, alive. Something enormous was there with her. She could not see it, but she felt it. Ancient, powerful, sleeping but beginning to stir like a giant waking after centuries of rest. A voice that was not a voice spoke in her mind. Words that were not words echoed through her being. Who opened the door? Who gave the blind child sight? Lyra tried to answer but couldn't. The presence moved closer, examining her with attention that felt like being looked at by a son. I see through you now. I see through your new eyes. The pathways are open again. After so long in darkness, I can finally see. Lyra woke up screaming. The visor on her nightstand was glowing bright enough to light up the whole room. The crystal inside pulsed like a heartbeat. Across the galaxy in the ancient temples of the Velthera homeworld, priests woke to impossible events. Shrines that had been dark for 10,000 years suddenly blazed with light. Sacred pools showed visions. The oldest texts, written in languages no one could read anymore, began to glow with meaning. In the capital city, the high priest Kalen stood in the grand temple and watched as the statue of Vethmora lit up for the first time in recorded history. The stone eyes, which had been closed for millennia, now glowed with inner light. The sleeper wakes, Kalen whispered in horror and awe. After 10,000 years, the god opens its eyes again. Back on station Kepler 7, Lyra stumbled out of her room and made her way to Jiho's apartment. She pounded on his door until he opened it, confused and half asleep. Lyra, it's 3 a.m. What's wrong? Something is happening, Lyra said. She was shaking. The visor. The dreams. Jiho, I think we did something we don't understand. Jiho looked at her and felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Lyra's eyes were different. They glowed faintly with the same light as the visor, and when she spoke, her voice had a slight echo, as if someone else was speaking beneath her words. What do you mean? Jiho asked. The story I told you, about Vethmora, the sleeping god. Lyra's hands gripped his arms. I don't think it was just a story, and I think your visor didn't just help me see. I think it opened something. A connection. A door that was supposed to stay closed. Station sensors began detecting unusual quantum fluctuations. In the medical bay, patients reported strange dreams. In the engineering section, equipment showed impossible readings. Throughout the station, people started seeing things that shouldn't exist, shadows that moved wrong, glimpses of places that weren't there. And in her small room on the nightstand, the visor continued to pulse with light. The quantum resonance crystal that Jiho had so carefully calibrated was resonating with something far away. Something ancient and vast that was waking up after sleeping for 10,000 years. All because a human engineer had wanted to help a blind girl see the stars. Jiho stared at Lyra and realized that his simple act of kindness had just changed the galaxy in ways he couldn't begin to understand. The visor wasn't just a medical device anymore. It was a bridge. A connection between a mortal girl and a god that had been waiting in darkness for someone to finally open the right door. And now that door was wide open, and something was coming through. The Velthara delegation arrived 3 days later. 6 ships appeared at the station's edge, requesting immediate docking. Station security was nervous. The ships were old, covered in religious symbols, and they refused to explain their purpose until they met with the human who opened the divine eye. Jiho stood in the station's diplomatic meeting room, feeling completely out of his depth. Beside him, Lyra sat quietly, the visor resting on her face. She had refused to take it off even though strange things kept happening around her. Yesterday she had looked at a dead plant and it had suddenly bloomed. This morning she had touched a broken clock and it started working again. I don't mean to do these things, she had told Jiho. They just happen, like something is working through me. The door opened and the delegation entered. They wore long robes that glowed with intricate light patterns. At their head was an old Velthera with skin that barely glowed anymore. His eyes were wise and sad and very, very old. I am High Priest Kalen, he said in perfect English. I have traveled 17 days to reach this station. I come seeking answers and offering warnings. I'm Jiho, this is Lyra, and Tae Young. Jiho gestured to his friend who stood nervously by the wall. I'm just an engineer. I don't understand what's happening. Kalen's eyes fixed on Lyra. He made a complex gesture with his hands and the other priests bowed low. She carries the divine mark. We sensed her awakening from across the galaxy. The what mark? Jiho asked. Kalen sat down heavily like a man carrying a great weight. Human Jiho, you have done something that our people have not accomplished in 10,000 years. You have awakened Vethmora, the sleeper god, and you did it by accident. That was just a myth, Jiho said. A story. All myths begin as truth, Kalen replied. Let me tell you the real story. 10,000 years ago, Vethmora was not sleeping. The god was fully awake and existed in perfect union with our people. Vethmora saw through our eyes, felt through our hearts, experienced all of reality through us. We were the god's senses, and the god was our guiding light. One of the other priests brought out an old tablet showing ancient text. Kalen continued, but our ancestors grew afraid. They feared the god's power. They feared losing themselves to the divine presence. So they performed a ritual. They closed the pathways. They made Vethmora blind and forced the god into sleep. How? Tae Young asked. By removing all those who carried the seer bloodline, those born with the rare neural pattern that could connect directly to Vethmora. Kalen looked at Lyra with deep sadness. Your bloodline, child. Your family does not know their own history. Those born blind among Velthara are not cursed. They are the last descendants of the seer line. But without the knowledge of how to activate the connection, they remained just blind children. Abandoned. Forgotten. Lyra's hands gripped the arms of her chair. My family left me because they didn't know? Your family left you because our people forgot the truth and replaced it with superstition. We have committed a terrible sin against our own children for millennia. Kalen's voice broke with emotion. And now a human has restored what we destroyed. The visor this engineer built for you recreated the ancient awakening device. The quantum resonance technology matched the pattern perfectly. Jiho felt cold understanding wash over him. The crystal. The neural interface. I was trying to help Lyra see, but instead I built a bridge between her and a god. Yes, Kalen said. And now Vethmora is waking. We can feel it across all of Velthara space. The god is remembering itself, reconnecting to reality through this child's eyes, through your device. And so what do we do? Jiho asked. Can we stop it? Can we put the god back to sleep? We could remove the visor, one of the other priests suggested. Sever the connection before it completes. No. Lyra stood up suddenly. Her eyes flashed with light. When she spoke, her voice had that double quality again, as if two beings spoke together. I will not return to darkness. I will not be blind again. Kalen looked at her carefully. Child, is that you speaking or the god? Lyra paused. Confusion crossed her face. I don't know, both of us. We're becoming difficult to separate. When I see now, I see with more than my eyes. I see the connections between things. The energy flows. The patterns that hold reality together. Is that me or Vethmora? I can't tell anymore. Station sensors had been going crazy for 3 days. Time loops appeared in corridor sections. People reported seeing parallel versions of themselves. The fabric of space near Lyra seemed to bend and flex. Reality itself was becoming unstable. The awakening is incomplete, Kalen explained. Vethmora is caught between sleep and waking. The god exists partially in Lyra but cannot fully manifest. This halfway state is dangerous. It destabilizes the dimensional barriers. If we do nothing, the effect will spread. Not just through this station, but potentially across systems, across the galaxy. What do you want us to do? Jiho asked, though he feared the answer. The god must complete the awakening. Lyra must come with us to our homeworld. There in the Grand Temple, we can perform the full ritual. Vethmora will take complete possession of her body and consciousness. The child Lyra will cease to exist, but the god will be fully restored. Balance will return. Absolutely not, Jiho said immediately. You're talking about killing her. Erasing who she is. She is a vessel, one of the priests said. This is her purpose. Her destiny. She's a person. Jiho's voice rose. A girl who likes music and flowers and spent the last 3 months teaching me about her culture. You don't get to decide that her destiny is to stop existing. Lyra stood quietly between them, her glowing eyes distant. I can hear it, you know. Vethmora. The god speaks in my dreams and sometimes when I'm awake. It's not cruel or evil. It's just vast, ancient. It wants to experience existence again. To see and feel and know 10,000 years of darkness. Can you imagine that? 10,000 years of being blind? That doesn't mean it gets to take your life, Jiho said. But what if I want to give it? Lyra asked. What if this is something meaningful? Something important? That's not you talking. That's the god influencing you. How do you know? Lyra touched her visor. Maybe I'm influencing it too. Maybe we're already changing each other. The god remembers what it's like to be alone now because I was alone. I understand what it means to be vast because the god shows me infinity. We're not just god and vessel anymore. We're becoming something new. Kalen watched this exchange with ancient eyes. There is no precedent for this. In all our history, the connection was always complete, full possession. The mortals ceased to be, and the god lived through them. But you humans always find strange solutions to problems. Perhaps there is another way. What way? Taeyong asked. I do not know, Kalen admitted. But I see something in this child that I have never seen before.
She argues with the divine.
She negotiates with a god. Perhaps, he paused, thinking deeply. Perhaps the awakening does not have to be complete. Perhaps there is a middle ground. Jiho looked at Lyra. Really looked at her. She was scared and confused and trying to be brave. Just a girl who had been blind and now could see. A girl who didn't want to go back to darkness but also didn't want to disappear into something vast and unknowable. There's always a middle ground, Jiho said quietly. Every problem has a solution. We just have to think like humans. Compromise, adapt, build something new instead of accepting what was always done before. You would try to negotiate with a god? Kalen asked. I would try to save my friend, Jiho corrected. And if that means building a new kind of relationship between mortal and divine, then that's what we'll do. Lyra smiled. For a moment, she looked completely like herself again. You gave me sight, Jiho. Maybe you can give me something else too. Choice, control, a life that's mine even if I share it with something vast. Then that's what we'll do, Jiho said. He looked at the priests. Give me time. Give me access to your historical records. Every text about Vethmora and the awakening ritual. I'll find a way to modify the Visor, to create a connection that allows both Lyra and the god to exist, together but separate, sharing but not merging. Impossible, one priest said. I built a device that woke a sleeping god by accident, Jiho replied. Imagine what I can do on purpose. Jiho spent 5 days buried in ancient Velthera texts. The priests had given him access to their entire historical database, thousands of years of religious writings translated into English by the station's computers. Taeyong helped him sort through the technical details while Lyra rested under medical observation. The god inside her was growing stronger, and she was having trouble staying herself for more than a few hours at a time. On the 6th day, Jiho thought he understood. The ancient awakening ritual hadn't been designed to preserve the vessel. It had been designed for complete divine possession because that's what the priest wanted. One consciousness, one being. God made flesh, but the Visor was different. It was technology, not ritual. It could be programmed, adjusted, made to do something new. It's like a computer network, Jiho explained to Taeyong. Right now the connection is wide open. Lyra's consciousness and the god's consciousness are bleeding into each other with nothing to separate them. But what if we add partitions? Firewalls. Gates that Lyra can open and close. You want to put access controls on a god? Taeyong asked, sounding amazed and terrified. I want to give Lyra the power to choose when to connect and when to be separate. The Visor is the bridge. We can modify it to have, let's call them permission levels. Lyra stays Lyra most of the time. When she wants or needs to access the god's knowledge and power, she opens the connection. When she wants to be just herself, she closes it. Will the god agree to this? Let's ask, Jiho said. They brought Lyra to the workshop. Her eyes glowed constantly now, and her skin patterns were far brighter than any normal Velthara. When she spoke, the double voice was clear. Two beings speaking as one. Lyra, I need to talk to both of you, Jiho said. I have a proposal. We listen, Lyra said. The plural pronoun sent chills down Jiho's spine. I can modify the Visor. Create a partition system that lets you exist separately but together. Lyra stays Lyra. Vethmora exists through her but doesn't consume her. You share space but maintain individual identity. Lyra controls when the connection opens fully. Silence. Lyra's face went through complex expressions. Jiho could see the argument happening inside her head. Then she spoke in her own voice, just hers, with effort. The god says this is not how it was meant to be. Vethmora is supposed to be whole, complete, not limited by mortal boundaries. And what do you say? Jiho asked. I say I don't want to disappear. I just learned to see. I want to see more. I want to live. Tears ran down Lyra's face. But Vethmora has been alone in darkness for so long. The god deserves to experience existence again. Maybe there's a way for both of us to have what we need. That's the human way. Jiho said gently. Compromise. Both parties get something instead of one taking everything. It's not perfect, but it's fair. Lyra's eyes flashed. When she spoke again, it was the deep, echoing voice of something vast. The human proposes something never done before, something impossible according to ancient law. And yet, the voice paused, and yet I have learned something from this mortal child. I have felt her loneliness, her fear, her desperate hope to exist and be valued. I remember now what it is like to be small and alone. Perhaps I do not wish to erase such courage. Perhaps there is wisdom in the human's strange compromise. Is that a yes? Tae-young asked nervously. Both voices spoke together. It is worth attempting. The modification took 3 days. Ji-ho worked without sleeping, fueled by coffee and determination. He reconfigured the quantum resonance crystal to create what he called a partition protocol. The visor would maintain the connection, but with layers of control. Lyra would exist in her own mental space. Vethmora would exist in another. Between them would be a gate that Lyra could open. When the gate was closed, Lyra would be just herself with normal vision. When opened partially, she could access the god's knowledge and senses. When opened fully, both consciousnesses would merge temporarily, sharing everything. The key was that Lyra controlled the gate. Not the god, not the priests. Her. It's about consent, Ji-ho explained to High Priest Kalen, who watched the modification with deep concern. The old way treated Lyra like an object, a vessel with no rights. This way treats her like a person who gets to decide how to use her connection to the divine. You are teaching a god to ask permission, Kalen said slowly. This is either profound wisdom or dangerous foolishness. Maybe both, Ji-ho admitted. But it's better than the alternative. The moment came to test the modified visor. Lyra sat in the chair, Ji-ho's hands shaking as he prepared to activate the new programming. The priests had gathered to witness. Even station security was there, ready to act if something went wrong. Ready? Ji-ho asked. Ready, Lyra confirmed. He activated the new protocol. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then Lyra gasped. Her glowing eyes dimmed to normal. She blinked, looking around like she was waking from a dream. Lyra? Ji-ho asked carefully. It's me. Just me. Her voice was her own, no echo. She smiled. The god is still there. I can feel the presence. But it's separate now, quiet, waiting. She closed her eyes, concentrating. I'm opening the gate. Just a little. Her eyes flashed with light. I can see the energy flows again. The connections. The god's knowledge is available, but I'm still me. Still Lyra. She closed the gate and the glow faded. It works. It actually works. The priest looked stunned. Tae-young let out a whoop of joy. Ji-ho just felt weak with relief. High Priest Kalen stepped forward. Child, can you open the gate fully? Can you let us speak with Vethmora directly? Lyra nodded. She took a deep breath and opened the gate completely. For a moment her expression changed, became ancient and vast. When she spoke, it was the god's voice but filtered through her, sharing her, not consuming her. I am Vethmora, awake for the first time in 10,000 years. And I am changed. This mortal child has taught me something I forgot in my vastness. What it means to be small, to struggle, to hope. I will not take her life. We will share it. Together but separate, a partnership instead of possession. This is not according to tradition, one priest protested. Then, make a new tradition, the god replied through Lyra. Your old ways left children abandoned in darkness. This human's way gives them choice and dignity. I prefer his way. The god's presence pulled back and Lyra returned fully. She swayed, exhausted. It's strange, powerful, but I'm still me. I'm still here. Over the following weeks, word spread across Velthara space about what had happened. The compromise between mortal and divine. Some priests were outraged. Others were fascinated. But most importantly, blind Velthara children across the galaxy suddenly had hope. Ji-ho began receiving requests to build more visors. The Velthara government funded a program to identify descendants of the seer bloodline and provide them with the devices. Not to force them into divine service, but to give them the choice, to see if they wanted the connection, and on what terms. It was a revolution, a complete transformation of Velthara religious thought, all because a human engineer couldn't walk past a girl who needed help. 2 months after the modification, Lyra found Ji-ho in his workshop. She had decided to travel with him, wanting to see the galaxy before exploring her divine connection more deeply. I have something to tell you, she said. Her visor pulsed softly. The god wants to say thank you. Me? I didn't do anything for the god. I did it for you. That's why the god wants to thank you. You treated me like I mattered. Like my life and my choices were important. Even when faced with something ancient and powerful, you didn't back down. Lyra smiled. Vethmora says that 10,000 years of worship never taught it as much as 3 months with a stubborn human engineer. I'm not that special, Jiho said. Any decent person would have done the same. That's the thing about humans, Lyra replied. You don't see your own goodness as special. You just call it being decent. But to me, it changed everything. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. With the gate closed, she saw them as any person would, beautiful and distant. With the gate open, she could see the energy patterns that connected them, the vast web of existence that Vethmora perceived. Both views were wonderful in different ways. What will you do now? Jiho asked. Live, experience, learn. Lyra turned back to him. The god spent 10,000 years sleeping in darkness. I spent 16 years blind. Neither of us wants to waste another moment. There's a whole universe to explore. Would you show me Earth? I want to see these oceans and mountains you told me about. I'd be honored, Jiho said. That evening, as they prepared to leave the station, Tae-young pulled Jiho aside. You know what you did, right? You didn't just help one girl. You changed how an entire civilization thinks about disability, divinity, and individual rights. That's going to ripple across the galaxy for generations. I just built a visor, Jiho said. You built a bridge, Tae-young corrected, between mortal and divine, between blindness and sight, between old ways and new possibilities. That's what humans do. We build bridges. We find compromise. We make the impossible possible because we're too stubborn to accept that it can't be done. Jiho smiled. I'm going to tell people you said something philosophical. They'll never believe it. Shut up and help me pack. As their ship prepared to depart, Lyra stood at the viewport wearing her visor. The device pulsed softly with technological light and divine luminescence, perfectly merged. A fusion of human ingenuity and cosmic power. She was herself. She was connected to something vast. She was both mortal and divine. She was possible because someone had cared enough to try. She thought about a market 3 months ago where she had sat in darkness, mocked and abandoned. She thought about a human engineer who couldn't walk away. She thought about how one act of simple kindness had reshaped the galaxy. The ship jumped to light speed, carrying a blind girl who could see, a sleeping god who had awakened, and a human engineer who had proven that sometimes the best solutions are the ones nobody thought were possible. Together, but separate. Sharing but not merging. A partnership built on choice and respect. It wasn't the traditional way. It wasn't the way things had always been done. It was better. It was the human way.